Marcus Rivera arrived before dawn, his breath misting in the freezing Michigan air. The tower loomed above him, 42 stories of glass and stone catching the first faint glimmer of morning. Inside, the lobby gleamed like a jewel box, polished marble, chrome fixtures, spotless panes reflecting him back in tired, muted colors. His janitor's uniform was clean, but worn at the elbows. It was a uniform meant to blend in, not to be seen. Beneath that uniform, his hands still bore the calluses of a different life, one of drafting tables, CAD models, and structural equations. In another timeline, those hands would be checking schematics for a suspension bridge or a storm-resistant high-rise. In this one, they pushed a mop bucket. He carried more than cleaning supplies. In the worn leather wallet pressed against his chest, a folded photograph of his daughter rested behind his expired engineering license. Emma, 11 years old, grinning like the world could never touch her. That smile made every compromise survivable. 2 years earlier, he traded his Boeing security badge for a janitor's key card. The trade wasn't voluntary. Sarah, his wife, had fought cancer for 24 months, longer than doctors thought possible. The fight drained their savings, their home, and their future, leaving behind $18,000 in medical debt and a silence in the apartment that no amount of overtime could fill. Now, life was a series of calculations. Rent at the subsidized complex, groceries, after-school program fees, gas for the 10-year-old Honda. His MIT degree hung in a storage unit he could no longer afford, alongside boxed-up patents for safety systems no company wanted from a man with a 5-year employment gap. He moved through the building like a shadow, but he still saw what others didn't. Hairline fractures along a stairwell landing, condensation where it shouldn't be in the HVAC ducts, elevators overdue for maintenance by months, not days. He'd filed anonymous reports, careful not to draw attention. None had been answered. His first task was always the 42nd floor conference room, the room Victoria Hartwell would sweep into at 7 a.m. sharp. Victoria was precision embodied, heels clicking in exact rhythm, posture perfect, gaze sharp enough to cut. She was 38, heir to Hartwell Industries, an inheritor of a legacy built in glass, steel, and uncompromising will. Lately, that will was being tested. Morrison Enterprises was circling, their takeover attempt tightening like a noose. Her board wanted proof she had her father's spine. Victoria gave them what they asked for, a woman who could out-cold any man at the table. The armor cost her friends, family, and sleep, but weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. On Monday morning, Marcus was bent over the conference thermostat when she walked in with a cadre of investors. She didn't raise her voice, but the chill in it was worse. Don't touch executive equipment. Wait outside until we're done. 2 hours later, she left without a glance at him. He walked in to finish his work, mind already calculating how to stretch his $47 until payday. The week continued in small humiliations. A passing remark about the floors being properly cleaned for once, said while he was kneeling to wipe up someone else's coffee spill. She never addressed him by name. By Friday, the pressure on her was visible, a fine crack in otherwise perfect glass. The quarterly board meeting was minutes away when Marcus stepped in to replace an air filter. Bad timing. But the task was urgent. This is why some people make decisions and others clean up after them, she announced to the room, the words carrying the performative strength of someone on trial. The board laughed. Marcus didn't reply. He simply turned to go. That's when Emma's honor roll certificate slipped from his pocket and landed on the polished table. Victoria barely glanced at it. Maybe focus more on your work than personal items. Some of us are trying to run a company. He picked up the paper with the same care he'd have given Gold Leaf. Left without another word. That night, parked outside the after-school program, he watched Emma help a younger student with math homework. The $75 science project she was so excited for felt as far away as a vacation in Paris. His account balance made the choice for him. He opened his laptop, hunting for freelance engineering work. Sleep could wait. The building loomed behind him, windows glinting in the wind. He still loved buildings, knew them the way other men knew engines or rivers. And this one, This one had bones that were starting to crack. Friday evening came with a storm that didn't so much arrive as attack. Wind tore at the city's edges. Rain hammered the Hartwell Industries tower in sheets, turning the glass facade into a distorted mirror. On the 42nd floor, Victoria Hartwell sat alone at the long conference table. Documents were spread in precise rows: financial charts, legal filings, shareholder statements, all pointing toward the same grim reality. Morrison Enterprises was close to winning. 3 board members had already defected. 2 more, and Hartwell would be theirs. Victoria's pen tapped against the page as she traced the numbers that spelled ruin. She'd spent the last year proving she could lead. But leadership in the corporate arena wasn't about keeping your company healthy. It was about making it appear invincible until the other side ran out of patience or resources. Morrison wasn't running out of either. Lightning flashed, momentarily painting the tower in white light. She didn't even flinch. Her eyes stayed on the balance sheet. Down in the service corridors, Marcus Rivera pushed his cart. Overtime tonight. He was covering a sick coworker's shift. $30 extra to be added to Tuesday's paycheck. He'd take it. Every scrap helped. The storm was loud enough to be felt in the building's bones, a low vibration Marcus recognized. This wasn't just weather, it was a stress test, the kind of test older structures failed quietly at first, then catastrophically. He paused in the west stairwell, fingers grazing the wall where water stains had been spreading for months. The concrete felt colder than it should have. Moisture was bleeding in from somewhere, widening microscopic cracks with every drop. He'd warned about it 3 times in the anonymous suggestion system. No one had listened. At 7:15, the first lightning strike hit the building's main transformer. The lights died instantly, plunging the tower into shadow. A second later, the backup generators kicked in, but their hum was uneven, labored, like an old man trying to catch his breath. Marcus frowned. He'd known those generators were overdue for servicing. In another life, he'd have been the one writing the maintenance schedule. Upstairs, Victoria finally looked up from her papers. The elevator doors were locked, as per safety protocol. It would be at least a few minutes before maintenance restored full power. She gathered her notes, decided to take the stairs. 42 flights didn't scare her. The door to the west stairwell closed behind her with a heavy metallic thud. The emergency lights glowed dim orange, throwing jagged shadows across the walls. She descended briskly, her heels clicking in time with her heartbeat. The building groaned faintly, but she dismissed it as wind. At the 31st floor, a sound stopped her, a grinding, tearing noise like metal being wrenched apart. It came from below, echoing upward. Her father's voice flashed into memory. Buildings are like people, Vic strong if you take care of them, weak if you don't. The floor shuddered. Then, without warning, a section of the stairwell collapsed. The noise was deafening. Concrete smashing into concrete, rebar snapping like bones. Victoria was thrown sideways, slamming into the wall. Pain flared white-hot in her ankle. When the dust cleared, she saw the problem. The collapse had sealed both directions. Above her, twisted debris blocked the path to the 32nd floor. Below her, the way down had become a jagged void. Water trickled somewhere close, the sound growing louder as it pooled on the landing. Her right foot throbbed with a pain so sharp it made her nauseous. She tried to stand. Her ankle refused to hold her weight. The storm outside roared on, a relentless percussion. Inside, the air was damp and claustrophobic. The failing emergency light above her flickered like a dying pulse. She pulled her phone from her jacket pocket, saw the cracked screen. No signal. Even if she had service, she knew this stairwell was a dead zone. The first scream ripped out of her throat before she could stop it. It was instinct, raw and uncalculated. The noise disappeared into the stairwell's echo and the storm's rage. Marcus was on the 34th floor when he thought he heard something. A faint, human sound buried under wind and thunder. He stopped, tilted his head, listened again. There it was. Not the building settling. Not the creak of overworked metal. This was desperation. He keyed the emergency radio. Hartwell Industries, possible entrapment. 31st floor, west stairwell. Structural compromise. Static, then a voice. Multiple emergencies, citywide. Earliest fire department ETA is 40 minutes. Can you evacuate safely? Marcus glanced toward the west stairwell door. 40 minutes might be too long. I'm going in. Sir, we advise you to wait. Do not attempt. I have 20 years of structural engineering experience. Marcus cut in. Someone's in trouble. I'm not waiting. He wheeled his cart into the maintenance room, moving with practiced efficiency. Window washing ropes, a headlamp, a crowbar, a length of industrial cord, tools meant for repair jobs, now repurposed for a rescue. Before he left, he pulled out his phone and called Emma's after-school program. Tell her I might be late. And his voice softened. Tell her I love her. He hung up before he could think about what 40 minutes could mean in rising water. Victoria's breathing came in sharp, uneven bursts. The water was already ankle-deep and icy, seeping into her bones. Every minute it rose, the air seemed to shrink. She tried to focus on the sound of the storm, to remind herself that the outside world still existed. But the walls pressed in. Her skin prickled with the memory of a childhood panic. The night she'd been locked in her father's wine cellar during a party, forgotten until she was screaming and hoarse. She told herself she was stronger now, that the Ice Queen didn't panic. Another scream tore free anyway. Marcus had already bypassed 2-block stairwell doors using maintenance shafts and ductwork. He moved through the tower's skeleton like a surgeon navigating an anatomy he knew by heart. Every shutter of the building told him the storm was winning. By the time he reached the 31st floor mechanical space, the ductwork rattled under his weight. Rust flaked off in his hands. He ignored the groans of stressed steel, focusing instead on the flicker of light ahead, the failing emergency lamp in the west stairwell. He crawled forward until he could see her through the grate. Victoria Hartwell, so immaculate in his memory, was slumped against the wall, hair plastered to her face, shivering in rising water. Miss Hartwell, he called, voice steady, as if this were a routine repair. It's Marcus Rivera. I'm here to get you out. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. The janitor? 20 years of structural engineering before that, he said, already scanning the debris for weak points. Can you tell me where you're hurt? My ankle. I can't feel my feet. And the water. We're getting you out before that's a problem, Marcus said. The building moaned around them, the sound of slow collapse. Time was short. Marcus didn't waste words. The clock was already ticking on this stairwell stability, and water was the enemy you couldn't bargain with. He swung the grate open with a groan of metal, then lowered himself into the debris-strewn landing. The cold water swallowed his boots instantly. Victoria tried to straighten. The motion made her gasp, teeth clenched against the sharp flash in her ankle. You can't get through, she said, nodding at the mangled concrete above and below. Not the way you came, Marcus agreed, crouching beside her. His headlamp lit her face in sharp relief, skin pale, lips trembling, mascara streaked. She didn't look like the woman who dismissed him in front of the boardroom hours ago. She looked like a person who'd run out of options. His inspection was quick but thorough, hands steady despite the chaos. Fracture in the ankle. Circulations slow from the cold. We'll splint it before we move. He tore strips from an emergency blanket in his pack, improvising padding. A length of cord from his kit cinched the splint tight. She bit back a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. That's the worst of it, he lied. It wasn't. Getting her out would be the worst. The direct path was blocked. Going back up risked more collapse. Going down meant open voids and unstable concrete. But Marcus knew this tower's other skeleton, the forgotten veins hidden from tenants and executives. There's an old maintenance shaft, he said, slipping the pack onto his shoulders. Hasn't been on a blueprint since the 80s. It's our way out. I can't walk on this ankle. I didn't say you were walking. He lifted her with a practiced motion, arms under her knees and shoulders. Her weight nothing compared to the Boeing crates he used to move, or the way he'd carried Sarah from the couch to bed in those final months. Her voice came muffled against his shoulder. Why? After what I said, what I did. Because it's the right thing, Marcus said, moving toward a door marked authorized personnel only. Because you're a human being who needs help. And because my daughter wouldn't forgive me if I walked away. The building groaned like something alive and in pain. The maintenance corridor beyond was a narrow tunnel of corroded pipes and cables. Marcus's headlamp turned the dark into a shifting landscape of dust and rust. He navigated by memory, the old blueprints still printed in his mind. "Watch your head," he murmured, ducking under a sagging duct. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "You're carrying me. You're the one who needs to watch his head." Her voice was stronger now. Good. That meant shock wasn't winning yet. The first obstacle came quick, a bulkhead sealed decades ago. Marcus set her down carefully, used the crowbar to pry at the corroded lock. It gave after a long, teeth-gritting pull. "You've done this before," she said as he shouldered the door open. "I've fixed more buildings than I can count," he replied. "Never had to pull the CEO out of one, though." The shaft yawned open before them. Vertical darkness framed by rusted rungs. The smell of stagnant air rolled upward. Victoria's grip on his jacket tightened. "You can't be serious. It's this or wait for rescue in a stairwell filling with water." She stared down into the black. Her breathing quickened. "I can't." "You can," Marcus said, voice calm but unyielding. "One rung at a time. Don't look down. I'll be right behind you." For a moment, she stayed frozen. Then, with visible effort, she reached for the first rung. Her injured leg made the descent clumsy and painful. Every movement sent echoes through the shaft. Marcus stayed close enough that if she slipped, he'd catch her. "Good. 3 more. You're halfway." At one point, she froze, forehead pressed to the cold metal. "I'm not halfway." "You're lying." "Yeah," Marcus admitted. "Because halfway is too far to quit, and you're not quitting." She kept moving. When they reached the bottom, the shaft opened into another maintenance tunnel, this one leading toward the lower lobby. The rumble of distant voices meant rescue crews had finally arrived. Victoria's pace quickened, not from strength, but from the magnetic pull of survival. The final barrier was a rusted service door. Marcus kicked it hard twice before it gave way. They stepped into a lobby lit by flashing red strobes. Firefighters swarmed, radios crackling. The air smelled of wet concrete and ozone. Victoria clung to his arm until a paramedic guided her toward a stretcher. She gripped his hand hard enough to hurt. Her voice was barely audible over the chaos. "Don't leave me." Marcus didn't answer. He stayed until the ambulance doors closed, then turned toward the parking garage. His second job was waiting. Victoria woke 2 days later in a private hospital room, ankle wrapped in layers of gauze, for humming beside her. She didn't remember the ambulance ride, just Marcus's voice telling her to keep moving, that she could make it. The nurses told her he'd stayed until she was stable, then vanished. No interview, no fanfare, straight to his next shift. Something about that unsettled her more than the storm. She asked for his personnel file. It arrived in a plain manila folder, its contents as orderly as his movements had been in the stairwell. Marcus Rivera, 42. Education: Massachusetts Institute of Technology, summa cum laude. Experience: Boeing Senior Structural Engineer, 12 years. Patents: multiple, all related to building safety systems. Current position: night janitor, Hartwell Industries Tower. Personal: wife deceased, cancer, age 38. Daughter, Emma, 11, honor roll. Address: Riverside Housing Complex, Unit 17B. There were also copies of anonymous safety recommendations she recognized. One she dismissed as too costly. One of them directly addressed the very stairwell that had collapsed under her feet. Her first instinct was money. A $10,000 check routed through HR with a polite note. The check came back uncashed, with a single line written in precise engineering script. "I didn't do it for money." Her second attempt was a promotion, Director of Facilities. He refused, explaining something she'd never learned at Harvard Business School. "If my income goes up even $5,000, I lose my housing subsidy. Market rent here would be $12,000 more a year. I'd make less money and lose stability for my daughter." It's called the benefits cliff. Once you're on it, every step up is a fall. Her third attempt was sly. A consulting bonus labeled building structural assessment slipped into his paycheck. He showed up in her office the next day, polite but firm. "My dignity isn't for sale, Miss Hartwell. I have very little, but what I have is mine." 3 weeks after the rescue, they spoke for the first time without the veil of hierarchy. Victoria was at her desk, long past quitting time, drowning in takeover defense strategies. Marcus came in to empty trash bins, moving with that same quiet efficiency. Without looking up from her papers, she said, "I was wrong." He paused mid-motion. "Everyone has bad days. Not just that day. About you. About worth. About what makes someone valuable." Now, he looked at her. "Stop being so dignified. I was cruel. Deliberately. Because I thought it would make me look strong in front of the board." Cruelty, Marcus said, aligning chairs with almost mathematical precision, is usually fear in disguise. "What were you afraid of?" "That they were right. That I wasn't my father. That I was too soft. That I'd lose everything." Her voice cracked slightly. "My brother was supposed to take over, but he's in prison. I was the fallback. Every meeting feels like a test I'm failing before I start. So you chose to hurt someone who couldn't fight back." The truth was sharper than she'd expected. "Yes. My daughter asks why some people are mean. I tell her, hurt people. But she's smart. She asks why some hurt people choose kindness instead. And what do you tell her? That real strength is choosing kindness when you've been hurt. Anyone can pass pain along. It takes courage to let it stop with you." They talked until nearly midnight. She learned about Sarah, how Marcus had left his career to care for her through chemo, how they'd kept Emma's world stable even when theirs was collapsing. "I gave up a career," Marcus said, "but I kept everything that mattered. Those last 2 years. I wouldn't trade them for a corner office." Victoria thought about her own sacrifices, relationships she'd never started, a family she'd decided against because pregnancy would be bad optics for the board. "I gave up everything that mattered for things that don't," she admitted. "It's not too late to change that," Marcus said softly. When she offered to judge Emma's science fair project, it wasn't a PR move. She meant it. The school gym smelled faintly of glue sticks and popcorn. Folding tables were lined with cardboard displays, most crooked, all earnest. Emma's project, renewable energy for low-income housing, was flawless. Her math was tight, her model innovative. When Victoria asked where she got the idea, Emma shrugged. "Dad says engineering should help everyone, not just people who can afford it." Victoria carried those words home like they were heavier than steel. The media storm came a month later when security footage leaked. Grainy images of Marcus hauling her through the collapsing tower. "Janitor saves billionaire CEO" spread fast. Marcus hated it. Emma came home crying when classmates called her the janitor's daughter, like it was an insult. Victoria tried to redirect the narrative, but every press release turned him into either a charity case or a noble caricature. "Every time you try to help publicly," Marcus told her, "you remind everyone I'm beneath you. You can't fix systemic inequality with a press statement." This time she listened. She stopped trying to save him in ways that left him smaller in the public eye. 6 months after the storm, Hartwell Industries faced an unavoidable reckoning. The insurance carrier had demanded a full structural assessment after reviewing the collapse reports. Several consulting firms submitted proposals, $2 million, for work Marcus could have done in his sleep. Victoria remembered his old patents, his engineering degree, and the way he'd navigated the building's skeleton in the dark. She made the offer through official channels. Standard industry consulting rates, no favors, no charity. He agreed, on one condition. No one would know it was him. Marcus's report found 15 critical vulnerabilities. His solutions saved the company over $3 million and made the building safer than it had been in decades. The board wanted to meet this anonymous genius. Victoria refused. "He values his privacy," she told them. The check cleared his medical debt and paid for Emma's summer science camp. He kept his janitor position for one reason: health insurance. Stability for Emma still outweighed prestige. For months later, stability cracked again. Emma collapsed at school. Appendicitis, routine until complications meant she needed a specialist surgeon the insurance wouldn't cover. Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room, doing math he hated, predatory loan rates, interest, repayment plans. Victoria arrived without ceremony, sliding into the seat beside him. "It's handled," she said. "I can't. You saved my life. Let me help save hers." His pride flared, then fell away in the face of Emma's pale face behind the glass. "Thank you," was all he said. During recovery, Victoria visited daily, bringing books, puzzles, and herself. She learned Emma's dream was to be an environmental engineer, learned her favorite subject was science, and that she barely remembered her mother's voice but had inherited her kindness. One afternoon, Emma looked up from a puzzle and said, "Dad says Mom would have liked you. He says you're learning to see people the way she did." Victoria had to excuse herself to cry in the hallway. By the end of the year, the building was running smoother than it had in decades. Victoria had quietly restructured policies, better wages for contract workers, advancement paths that included education stipends, childcare assistance. Executives muttered about her going soft. She defended each policy, with hard numbers showing improved productivity and retention. Marcus stayed out of the politics until the hostile takeover returned. This time, Victoria needed something bold, proof Hartwell could innovate without selling its soul. She remembered Marcus's patent, the safety system the industry had ignored a decade ago. They worked together in stolen hours, her at the conference table, him after mopping floors, turning the concept into a full proposal. It promised $30 million in savings over 5 years, reduced liability, and safer infrastructure. When the board demanded the name of the creator, Victoria didn't hesitate. Marcus Rivera, night janitor, former Boeing senior engineer, the man whose recommendations we ignored before a storm nearly killed me. Silence. Then pushback. Optics, they said. We can't promote a janitor to an executive role. Marcus was ready to walk away, but Victoria fought, publicly, relentlessly, until they offered him director of sustainable infrastructure, full benefits, flexible hours for Emma. He accepted. His janitor colleagues shook his hand like he'd just returned from a long journey. 3 months into the role, Marcus had overhauled building operations, cutting waste, improving safety, and implementing his long-ignored innovations. Workers noticed the changes first: better equipment, safer conditions, fairer schedules. One late evening, he and Victoria stayed behind to finish a report. They ate Chinese takeout at the conference table, talking like equals. "I see you now," she said quietly. "Not the janitor. Not the engineer. Just you." "I've always seen you," Marcus said. "Even when you were behind all that armor." When her car wouldn't start in the garage, he fixed it without a word, same as the first time they'd crossed paths. But this time, when he closed the hood, she kissed him. Soft, tentative, not an ending, but a beginning. They took it slow. Emma always came first. They kept boundaries at work, met for private dinners once a week, built something real. 18 months after the rescue, they married in a small community center. 20 guests. Emma was maid of honor. Her speech was simple. Mom would have liked knowing Dad found someone who sees him. Hartwell Industries transformed under their partnership. Employee first became policy, and profits rose anyway. Marcus's innovations became industry standards. Victoria learned that true leadership wasn't about being colder than the competition. It was about lifting the people who kept the lights on. They built a home where Emma thrived, surrounded by 2 parents who saw her brilliance and believed her future could be bigger than either of theirs. Some mornings, Marcus still arrived early, but now his key card read director. The building still whispered its secrets to him, but now people listened. And somewhere in the city, other towers still ran on the old math of profit over people. But in this one, the storm had changed the equation. Here, worth wasn't measured by title or paycheck, but by the choice you made when the lights went out and someone's voice called from the dark.